Good morning, everyone. It's a Saturday, and I thought I'd do a little sketching to warm up the hands. I've already started in this new little sketchbook at work. I love it. The quality of the paper is really nice. I usually buy like really cheap printer paper to get going because it's cheap, and I'm gonna make lots of drawings and I'm just gonna throw them out. But I'm really digging having a little bit a higher quality, thicker paper to draw on and to ink on. And especially with my favorite thick pencil, it's turning out really nice. But I've fallen into the trap of trying to make really nice pages, and then of course the next page has to be really nice. And I'm really happy with them, but that's not why I bought this sketchbook. It's the practice. And so I've just lined up a couple of screenshots from this comedy show that I want to listen along to. So I'm going to try and talk and draw at the same time. So one of the things I've been meaning to talk about for some time, and I've attempted a few videos, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but I've been practicing a lot. Like while I was not online, I was actually making a lot of drawings, just to keep my skills up, and it's been paying off, and I'm really pleased with how it's been turning out. I'd like to dig into some of the finer details a little bit more later on, but for now I'm very pleased to say that my overall skill, if you will, has seen some massive improvements. And it's not the kind of improvements, right? I find it very hard to put some of these things into words, but like it's not the kind of improvements where it's like I draw certain lines better, which is of course the case. It's more, I've been focusing a lot more on getting proportions right, and that's what's been paying off and been making my art better. Download complete. But the improvement I notice practicing and not trying to make a piece, if you will, is this is my first drawing of the day. And my first drawings of the day used to be really shitty. And then as I warm up, they would get progressively better. So that after like an hour of like making drawings, the next thing I would draw would be pretty awesome. And by pretty awesome, I mean for me. And by pretty awesome, I mean the kind of awesome that 5 minutes later you throw in the bin anyway, or you wish you hadn't drawn. But nowadays, like my first drawing always kind of takes me aback and makes me go like, that's not bad. That's actually pretty decent, you know. And so this one is also looking kind of decent. I always try and get the likeness, but I'm not obsessing about it. I'm more fixated on getting the proportions right, because I tend to have these built-in mistakes, if you will. Like I always want to draw the nose too long. I always end up with not enough space here, and like this is gradually getting better. One of the things that this week I've been focusing on, as you may have noticed with like this one, is I'm starting to ink more. So I've been drawing so much in pencil that now I'm kind of at this point where I realize like I really need to brush up my inking. Yeah, my inking, like I just find I came to this realization that I'm kind of covering up mistakes I have, flaws I have in my art, by doing lots of crazy lines. And
And there's nothing wrong with that per se. I mean, it's called artistic license for a reason. But what is not helping me is that when I try and ink that stuff, it looks really messy. For example, not that one, not that one. This is some designs for my comic book, so this one. So, I'm very fond of this drawing, even though I think the background looks a little too close. This face came out alright, but then I started going over here, and I think it looks okay now, because I learned to add a lot of contrast, but there's a lot of really messy stuff, where in hindsight, I would have drawn it differently. And it's because I make a lot of inks directly on a very loose sketch. And so that has to improve. And I have to learn how to render things in a certain way that is fast and efficient and cool. But at the same time, I kind of need to learn when to stop. And this is not a good example of that. Like this one, for example, I'm quite pleased with, even though it's too realistic. But like I try and render the hair in a certain way. And like you can still see the pencil of how little I actually drew, and it just kind of paid off over here. So yeah. So overall, I'd say and I'm going to use a sports analogy, which I'm probably going to screw up because I know nothing about sports. My batting average has gone up. So I still make drawings that look like the drawings from a couple of years ago, which are not that great. But on average, I just kind of hit something out of the park that looks better than before. And so being able to pull off something like this first thing in the morning, that is what I'm most pleased about. And well, what else can I say about it? I'm happy where it's going, but now it's time to take the next step to rendering. Now that my sketches are kind of where I want them to be, you know, instead of getting comfy.
I need new ones. They're running out, but they should hold out for one more day. Let's see if we can ink this guy. Ooh. Shall we? Nothing like a little coffee. All right, so got the wrong one. Let's get the 0.1 out. Regarding to inking, like was it what I was saying earlier about like going a little too crazy with like trying to cover up mistakes by making lots of crazy rendering, and it's really fun, and I love like seeing how it comes out and like being able to improve the drawing as I go along. But a lot of times afterwards I think, if this is how it was going to turn out, I could have just blacked this whole area out from the start and saved myself a lot of time. But of course this is part of the learning process, like getting to that point where I can see that beforehand, which I don't as of yet. So I'm trying to get better at it by just, well, I'm gonna have to fill this thing up. It's the only way to get better at it. So yeah, one thing that I learned from inking digitally is that starting out thin kind of speeds things up for me to see how to just kind of get going and to just trace everything really thin and then to go over it again kind of speeds things up for me, and I'm trying to take that into my my traditional art. One thing digitally as opposed to inking with this because of course I'm more experienced with this. But one thing I've noticed that I do differently inking digitally is that I want to, like I just said tracing, but I really want to draw all the outlines, whereas with drawing traditionally I'm a lot faster at just going like, I don't need to draw that, I can just do the outline or just a shadow here that hints at that, and that's enough. I don't tend to see that way digitally. I don't know if anyone else has that, like you see things differently drawing traditionally or digitally, or that maybe it's just when you're in a slightly different medium, even though technically it's the same, but when you're using a different medium, you allow yourself to do things differently just for the, you know, just for the experience. But so yes, so let's go. Okay. So what else do I want to say about having been offline all this time? I recommend to everyone to take some time offline. Whether it's just if you're just hanging out on Facebook, or if you're actually making videos like I've been doing for the past couple of months. I just kind of needed to reconnect and above all prioritize with a new job that I have. Sorry, I didn't get fired. But it's just been kind of important to just all of a sudden go like, I need to stop working on my comic book for a bit and make sure that I get to keep this job. You know, I'm out in a new country, living here in Spain, and the situation for a lot of people is not that great. This is a country where a quarter of the working population is unemployed, and that is nothing to take lightly, especially since I'm not from here, I'm not connected, I'm not fluent in the language. So it's, you know, all these fantasies of making it as an artist are to be taken seriously, but I do need to make sure there's money coming in, especially since having lived in the UK for over 10 years, where all of a sudden they decided to, you know, to vote themselves out of the European Union. My savings have taken such a dive that I was getting a little worried. I was getting more than a little worried. I was running out of money I could just throw around. And so yeah, I've been at this job now for just a little over 2 months. So I guess that's how long I've not made videos. And I think it's going pretty good. I get on well with my coworkers. It took me a while to get into the swing of things, like doing the actual job, like working. I've never worked in an office before. It's very different. The culture is quite different, but it's been fun. It's been fun learning all this stuff. And once I really got into the swing of things, obviously it really opened up the opportunity for me to just sit there and draw and get like a couple of pages in every day, you know. So I'm quite grateful for that, and I'm looking forward to expanding on that even more, like getting more disciplined, so that, you know, giving myself more assignments to draw.
So little assignments I've mentioned in other parts are rotating faces. So one of the things I would do at work is like I would draw someone from a still like this in between phone calls, and then I would take that face and rotate that face, and then I would give him a different expression, just to practice all those skills. One thing that I started doing, another thing I started doing was learning from the masters. And by learning from the so sometimes like I didn't want to think too much about it. I just kind of wanted to draw. I didn't know what to draw. You get that like, oh, what am I gonna do? Like, not that face. Like, you start thinking too much about it. So I just kind of cut myself off and just look up an artist I like, and I would just copy the piece. And let me see if I can find. So Travis Charest is an artist who did Wildcats for a while, and he's got a very European style almost. But I always loved like the realism he brought to comics after he moved away from, the obvious Jim Lee influences at the studio he was working at. I find it hard to find more of his stuff. Like most of the stuff I find of his is really from way back when, the early 2000s, and he's a really amazing artist. But apparently, he's been living it up in France and working on some proper European style graphic novels for a French publisher that I'm gonna attempt to find one of these days this weekend. There's a comic book store just around the corner I've been meaning to check out. So I was talking about learning from the master. So I've been looking at some of his art and I just copy it. And I just kind of feel my way around how he builds up a scene, a face, hair, just the kind of rendering techniques he uses to do so. And just see if I can apply them. And it works. It works. It's really good fun. I recommend it. And it kind of led me to this little soul searching. Like, who are my influences again? And I remember answering that question some time ago in a video, and one of the artists that came up was Eric Larson, who I love. And I really look up to him as a big influence on the way I sketch, because he's one of those artists that he can just knock it out super fast. Another artist I always find myself looking at online, like on Facebook, I'm in some fan groups and whatnot, is Arthur Adams. He's an old favorite of mine. He always used to do X-Men annuals, and he's just, nowadays he's a lot more stylized than he used to be, but it's still so fantastic. Like, I just love his style. And so I came up with this little idea to like, what if I just adopt some patron artists, if you will. Like, these are my influences. And so I came up with Eric Larson, Travis Charest, and Arthur Adams. And then two out of three are unfortunately known for not being the fastest artists and tend to draw covers. So it almost kind of made me revise what I was my artist, because I was always almost like, oh, that's really not, it's not what I need right now, trying to finish a comic book. But I'm sticking to them. So two of them have quite stylized styles. And one of them is a lot more cartoony than the other. One is a lot more realistic. So that's cool. That's a noted difference. And one of them, in my opinion, is just, when it comes to drawing, and the way he sketches things out, it's just the emphasis with Erik Larsen, for me, is fun. Like, it's just so much fun in his art for me. In his storytelling. And I really have to catch up what he's doing with that Spawn Savage Dragon crossover that him and McFarlane are doing. I think that's right about now. I tweeted a picture of it not too long ago, because it was actually a McFarlane piece, but that I tweeted out, not Erik Larsen, but I really dug it. All right. So yes, I've got my 3 patron saints lined up. Travis Charest, Arthur Adams, and Erik Larsen. One for realism and what it brings to the table. One for composition, not layout, because I think Charest has got a really good, strong sense of layout as well. And one for speed. It can change over time, of course. I'm not saying that I'm going to stick to these for my career, if you will. But I think for now, for this project, and by this project I don't mean this art, I mean my comic book, I really want to pin some of their stuff on the wall in my studio to be, which neatly segues into my next topic. Hey guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. It's a little longer than my usual, even though my usual is about 2 months ago. I've been offline for a long time. I thought I'd make a little comeback, and after spending about a week editing all these videos I've been making, like walking around Barcelona and like my trips to Amsterdam and around here, and just like art I've made. You know, things just weren't kind of coming together, because I've just been out of practice when it comes to editing and, like, you know, making it snappy. And so I went completely the other way today, where I decided to just draw and have fun and chill out, and that kind of had me thinking, like, what if I, instead of making a comeback with a Making Phosphor comic book YouTube video series where I just talk about my my comic book and how that's coming along, which I've been editing, I think I'll just try something like this, where whatever comes up, well, you know, it's about me living in Barcelona, it's about traveling, it's about, you know, making art. And ideas I have, and there's a segment called Making Phosphor, which is just about the comic book. So I thought I'd reuse an old name that I had for when I first came out here, and I had the thought of making lots of pictures about the city and like doing portraits and all that stuff, and kind of like bringing that back and just putting it in a blender and just kind of seeing what comes out, rather than worrying too much about finding a format that works for me when I may or may not have the time for it. That being said, I do still have an episode of Sketch Doodle Draw almost ready, except for the commentary. So expect that on Monday. So for now, I'll be signing off. I hope you enjoyed this very long, rambling drawing show. And I hope you're all working on your own art projects, and I'll be seeing you next week. So have a good day.